can see. So yeah, can you tell me about who you are, what your name is?
I'm Delphi Campbell and I am a soft sculpture portrait artist most of the time. My practice is multidisciplinary but always kind of centred around the idea of the multifaceted self and the little tiny pieces and components that make up who I am. I first studied fine art when I was in college, and I spent a lot of time in hospital at that point in my life, and painting and drawing were some of the only things that I could always do and I could always access, and it became a very therapeutic process for me, something that I could do in hospital or at home, whatever. Yeah, so going to Cardiff Met was probably the best thing I've ever done with my life. I got to really immerse myself in the art scene here in Cardiff, and it was very, very transformative for my practice. So that's when I started working predominantly with soft sculpture, and because I was becoming physically ill at the same kind of time, or more accurately, I was getting my first physical diagnoses. It was a really natural way to, my practice became very centred around sickness and disability and everything that comes with the body. It was a really kind of natural subject that I was drawn to, and I still am. So the main thing with my materials is that they're almost exclusively secondhand. So that's limiting and positive in equal measure, I think. Because I'm working with what I can acquire, it's not always possible for me to obtain a really specific thing. So my practice is led by the materials I find. So it makes me a little bit of a hoarder. But I choose those based on like any quality that the fabric might have, or if there's something intriguing to me or just something attractive about it. I think it's fairly intuitive, and the way that I work is also very intuitive. There's a lot of pattern making, and a necessity of that is lots of drafts and lots of alterations, and I think in a sense soft sculpture is a lot more traditional than people anticipate, because you're still working with the same basic principles of adding or subtracting. My number one hope is that it's fun. Because the show is fully interactive and I want as many people as possible like feeling and squeezing, my main thought is that I hope that it's fun and playful and that people just have a good time testing out all of the different textures and things. The kind of overarching, I suppose, theme of the work is very centred on the body, more specifically my body, and how it kind of acts as an archive of not only my life but as a medical archive. You can see all the scars from procedures and tests and bruises, and all of that is kind of piled into one globular mass in the show. So the way that I actually make my work varies a lot from piece to piece, but I am often inspired, as I said earlier, by my own body. And so there are lots of different sources I draw from, but in this show, micrographs were a really big source of inspiration. If you don't know, a micrograph is just a photo taken through a microscope. So it allows you to see the kind of cellular details and structures that exist in vast more detail. And those shapes and structures were really influential in the building of this work. But it's also been inspired by things like my MRI scans and blood tests and all my kind of various treatments. Yeah. The source material, I suppose, is expansive, and sometimes I will shift between very figurative and very abstract work. And something I find really interesting, particularly working with the micrographs, is that cellular structures, the kind of more micro zoomed in you get, the more abstract the forms appear, because when you're looking at just a single cell, it's very globular or amorphous, and I find that it evokes the body without being too figurative. Not that it evokes the body without being strictly figurative, or not figurative in a way that everybody can identify. I'm so thrilled with how the work has grown and this opportunity to really push my practice, and I really can't wait for everyone to see the work in person.